It's time for Brush Street Beat, presented by our friends at McLaren Health Care. Today's guest is Evan Petzold of the Detroit Free Press. Evan, thank you so much for taking the time to join us from sunny Lakeland, Florida.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me. Definitely enjoying the weather. Wishing you guys well, though.
Oh, it's nice here today, Evan. So, like I told you offline, I'm not gonna listen to that today. It's nice here. So let's get to talking some baseball. And before we hopped on the interview, you were talking about sort of what the differences are between having AJ Hinch at training camp. I'm sorry, at spring training rather than years past. So what have the differences been?
I think like the biggest thing that we kind of all noticed right away was just the way that he kind of works with his players and the way that he kind of gets inside their head, wants to figure out what makes each and every one of them tick. A lot of that's the psychology degree that he has, that he got back in college, and so you kind of see some of that come out. He, right when spring training started, with pitchers and catchers, he kind of created a plan where he was going to bring them all into a room and all these guys were going to talk about expectations. And like, it was just, I guess he's really blunt. I mean, Jake Rogers talked about it a little bit, saying, hey, listen, like, he told me exactly where I'm at in this process. He was, super honest with me. And we just kind of like left it at that with, hey, here are your expectations. Here's where things stand with you, right now. And obviously it's a fresh slate for a lot of these guys just because of the fact that, it is a new manager and he's trying to learn, who they all are. But I mean, you can gather enough information, based on people that you talk to and different things like that, where you can get an idea of who these players are beforehand. So it was just a lot of expectations right away, and he's still going through that as guys are trickling into camp. Even sat down Miguel Cabrera and like gave Miguel Cabrera his expectations, gave him a full spring schedule. Here's when we're going to play you at first base. Here's when we're going to play you as the designated hitter. Like, here's what our entire plan is for you, Miguel. And Miguel Cabrera loves that. Like, that's what he likes. He needs to know exactly what's going on, or as AJ said, he just tries to do it all. So it's just that kind of a mindset of getting into each player's head, figuring out what makes them tick, and then giving them a plan. That's kind of the first thing that jumped out to me. And then even when we interview him, I mean, just talking to him and asking him about certain players. I mean, if you ask him about Jake Rogers, one of the first things that he said was, hey, defense still needs to be number one priority. And it makes sense, though, because if you're Jake and you struggle when you're up in 2019, hitting, that's all anybody's talked about is Jake Rogers needs to hit the baseball. But the reality is his bread and butter is his defense. And in a way, over time, if you focus so much on the offense, you start to, maybe you have some defensive lapses. And so right there was a really subtle message. And we talked to Jake Rogers after that. And he said, yeah, one of the things I need to work on is making defense my priority and keeping that my priority, because that's how I'm going to be the backup catcher this year, is if I can, be solid defensively and battling at bats. And so, the thing that interested me was be strong defensively first and then battling at bat second. That's how, Rogers described it. So I think it's just little things like that are really jumping out to you. You can tell he's super calculated. The things that he notices are unbelievable. I mean, with George Lombard, who's the bench coach, he also works with the outfielders. I mean, it's just from the smallest things, like the first step in the outfield, or even pre-pitch. Like, how are you setting yourself up pre-pitch to be able to be successful in the outfield? So it's like the smallest things like that maybe you don't notice right away. But as you get talking to AJ, you realize more that those are the priorities that he's setting. And it's just a different mindset. It's a different culture, and it's been really interesting so far.
Evan, I was on a couple of the calls, and I guess what I'm curious about, I heard Cody Clemens say that his brother is sending him a top-of-the-line first baseman's mitt because he's going to play first. And so I'm wondering, the next time we have you on, will I be asking you about your shot at first base for the Tigers? What's going on here? It seems like everybody and their brother is playing first base. Is this going to be first base by committee? What's happening with that position?
Well, they smell it. I mean, they smell the opportunity, right? I mean, I don't know. It's kind of, you play first base, and oh, you over there, you play first base too. But they don't have a first baseman. I mean, they don't have a first baseman, and it's deeper than that, though. Like, I guess to go to the first base topic, I mean, you look at Renato Nunez. He's not in camp yet, but he should be here sooner than later. Early this week, I'd expect to see him start getting into games. But and that he's having a minor league deal, but hit for power with the Baltimore Orioles, a guy that if he makes a team, he slots in there as kind of your everyday first baseman. They want to see if he's going to be defensively ready to take on that position, but and we'll see. He has to make the team too, so like there's a lot of toss up there. But yeah, I mean, Candelario can still slide over and play first base if they need him to. Miguel Cabrera is going to play some first base this year. I think the biggest thing when it comes to that position, though, is who makes the team, Paredes or Nunez. Because if Paredes makes the team, you're going to see more Candelario at first base. If Nunez makes the team, you're going to see him at first base as a mainstay. And then, you're going to see a lot more of Jamer Candelario over at third. So still some things to figure out there. I guess there was a way they could both make the team with Paredes as kind of a bench option, but a lot of that stuff still has to be played out. And it doesn't help that Nunez isn't in camp yet. So we haven't really got a good look at kind of what AJ's thinking there.
Another interesting storyline, Evan, is obviously pitching, which is going to be interesting all around the league this year, just with the fact that teams are talking about using 10 to 12 guys to get through the season. And one of the guys we expect to see in the starting rotation is Casey Mize. And he struggled in his rookie season last year, and he's had some positive and negative things happen for him at spring training thus far. But what has stood out to you from what you've seen from Casey Mize?
Yeah, I mean, the stuff is a lot better. Like that's something that I got to give to him. I mean, when you're looking at pitch tunneling, trying to get pitches to look the same for as long as possible until they break, like you can tell he's definitely taken a step forward with pitching coach Chris Fetter. And I mean, obviously, too, the pitch selection has been solid in terms of trying to go up with the fastball a little bit more and then let everything else play down. That was one of his priorities this offseason, and it's working. Like he hasn't given up any hits, and he hasn't allowed any runs, and he's pitched in 2 games and in 4 total innings, but the command is still a problem. I mean, 6 walks, 6 walks, 4 strikeouts. That's 6 walks in 2 innings. And on Sunday, he pitched a perfect 3rd inning and just cruised right through it, and then walked the bases loaded in the 4th inning. Ended up getting out of it with a nasty slider to strike a guy out. But like it's the command for Casey, and it's he's doing a much better job getting to 2 strikes. Like that's been really impressive as well. But he kind of talked about it a little bit too. He said it's a little bit of a mental thing for me, trying to pound the strike zone even with 2 strikes. Like don't try to finesse it too much and hover it around the zone to get swing and misses. Like pound the strike zone to get swing and misses. So that's interesting. We'll see if he adjusts. I mean, I think he will. And that's the thing too, is he is a strike thrower. Like that's what he was at Auburn. That's what he was in the minor leagues. We didn't see it a ton last year. He struggled in that category, but he seems like he has a good head on his shoulders, and I don't really see a reason why, if he can get that turned around and focus on that command a little bit more and really pinpoint it in there and truly pound the strike zone, I don't see why he's not on the opening day roster.
I'll tell you something, Evan. You didn't say a definitive no about first base for you, so I'm just going to tell you, carry your first baseman with you wherever you go. You never know when opportunity is going to strike. With that said, speaking of opportunity, Akil Baddoo, a guy that we really enjoyed talking to, I think as a Rule 5 pickup has done virtually everything he could do maybe to make this club. And then I'm hearing he could be caught up in a numbers game, that there are already outfielders on here, that he would have to be extraordinary. Will the Tigers keep him on the roster this year, or will they have to send him back to the Twins?
It's really a tough question. I mean, we've only seen him through 6 games, but yeah, he's able to. I mean, he makes good contact. He puts up good at bats. He's drawn walks. He's gotten hits. Like he's done everything that you've asked him to do. He's been in the right place at the right time. Defensively, he's a smart defensive player. We'll see how things unfold over maybe really from now until the next off day on March 18th, and I think that'll be the true telling of is Akil Baddoo going to make the roster.
Evan, back to pitching on Wednesday, we're going to see Franklin Perez make his spring training debut, and you wrote a little bit about him in your latest article for the Free Press. We haven't seen much from him, so what exactly do you think staff is looking for out of him in his debut?
Yeah, that's the thing that's interesting is just, I mean, it was 27 innings in 9 games between the 2018 and the 2019 seasons in the minors, and then obviously with last year's shutdown, he was at the alternate site, and we didn't get a ton of reports there. But we'll see. I mean, they were hesitant to get him into a game. I can say that much because virtually, I mean, he was healthy last spring training, and he hasn't had any injury, problems since then. So he's been healthy for quite some time. And the fact that he wasn't able to get in games right away is a little bit concerning to me. But we'll see how it goes. He threw, I think it was 3 or 4 live BPs, and I think he looks good enough to throw in there and kind of test out what the stuff looks like. I wouldn't be surprised if the velocity was pretty low. In terms of a guy that used to be able to, get into that mid to upper 90s range. I wouldn't be surprised if he was in the low 90s. I'm just trying to kind of, temper expectations because this is a guy who's been injured and has battled, tried to battle back and hasn't been able to pitch. And when you're not pitching, it's really hard to hone in on some of that stuff. So the expectations for me, like I'm not really looking for him to, blow the doors off in terms of, what his heater looks like and things like that. I'm looking to see, how smart can he be with his pitch selection. Is he able to keep guys off balance and keep them guessing? Like that might be his. As I kind of alluded to with Jake Rogers earlier in the defensive thing, like the bread and butter for Franklin Perez might be, trying to just command his pitches. Like if he can command his pitches and if he can show good pitch selection and keep guys off balance, there's an opportunity there. But I don't know if he's ready to really turn up the heat again and, be back to that number one prospect type of player that he was. But time will tell. I mean, we'll see how he does in the game. I think it's too soon to judge a guy like that who's come off the injuries until we really see him pitch against, actual competition.
Evan, thank you so much for taking the time. Oh, do you have another one?
Well, I know we're running long, but really, really quickly, I just wanted to ask you, there's some managers who let the general manager decide the roster, give me the players and I manage them. AJ Hinch does not seem to be that type of guy. How much say do you think he's going to have about who makes this Tiger club? Because like I said, some managers would rather take a hands-off approach. It seems like AJ seems to be the guy that is washing his hands, not like Pontius Pilate, but just he's all over this club.
Well, two things. One, he definitely respects the people around him when it comes to general manager Al Avila and the rest of the front office. I mean, those are guys that have been doing it for a long time. But you have to remember, too, AJ's seen the front office side of it. He's been in that side of it. He's been in the player development side. I mean, he knows talent. So I think you're going to see a lot of – I don't want to use the word control because that kind of seems like it's, grabbing people by the throat and stuff like that. And that's not the kind of guy that he is. But you're going to see him, with a lot of influence in what happens here, not only this year but into the future as well. I mean, he knows what he wants. He has a vision. And I think, Al Avila – and even Chris Ilitch as the owner, I think they know that. They knew that when they were hiring AJ. They know what kind of manager he is and kind of where he's at in his head in terms of what he wants and the plan that he has and how he wants to construct things. So, I wouldn't be surprised if you see, a lot more influence out of AJ than we've seen in managers in the past.
Evan, thank you again for taking the time to join us today. And I know that it's an off day for the Tigers in Lakeland today, so hopefully you have your first baseman's glove and you're going to start taking some reps and practicing because you very well might be in a game this week.
Yeah. Hey, it's worth a shot.
I'll get working on it. I'll get working on it.
Love your hair, Evan. Love your hair.
Hey, you too.
Yeah, next time I see Art on camera, Evan, he's going to try to rock the middle part, so we'll see how that goes.
Oh, yeah, I'm definitely going to do that.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you guys a ton. I appreciate it. Yeah,
it was fun. Thanks.
Care.
Yep.
And a big thank you to McLaren Health Care for presenting Brush Street Beat right here on the Word on Woodward.